My darling Leo, I see you. Tonight's reading is a seasonal one, my darling, considerably more practical than mystical, and I want to give it to you plainly, because I think you actually need a checklist tonight, more than you need another metaphor. Astrology forecast for tonight, my darling. A late summer reset, for you specifically, what to complete, what to simplify, and what to emotionally clear, before the pace of autumn arrives, and makes doing any of it considerably harder than it needs to be right now. I am Madame Aurora, 35 years studying the stars from my office in Manhattan, and let me give you the real astrology first, because it is genuinely seasonal, and it happens, in roughly this same shape, every single year of your life. Your own season, my darling, the weeks the sun spends traveling through your own sign, is drawing toward its close. And I want you to understand what actually happens next in the sky, because it explains precisely why late summer feels the way it does for your sign specifically. The sun does not simply vanish from your sign and reappear somewhere unrelated. It moves directly into Virgo, the sign immediately following your own, ruled by a considerably more detail-oriented, organizing energy than your own expansive, generous one. Your season is handing the year off, my darling, directly, to a season built for exactly the kind of practical sorting tonight's reading is about to walk you through. That is why this particular week tends to produce a specific, recognizable restlessness in your sign. You can feel the handoff coming, even if you have never had the mechanism explained to you plainly. My darling, the restlessness is not anxiety. It is simply your own chart, quite accurately, telling you that the season for finishing, organizing, and clearing is beginning, and that beginning it now, deliberately, while your own considerable energy is still available to you, will serve you considerably better than waiting for autumn's faster pace to force the sorting on you later, less gently. I want to name why this handoff specifically favors acting now rather than later, my darling, because the reasoning matters. Virgo's own energy, precise and organizing, arrives considerably more easily to a life that has already been given a rough sort, and considerably less easily to one still fully cluttered with everything summer accumulated. If you wait for Virgo's season to do the sorting work for you, you will very likely find it exhausting, working against a considerable backlog rather than simply refining what is already reasonably in order. Doing the rough sort now, while your own generous, expansive energy is still available, sets Virgo's later precision up to actually succeed rather than struggle. Let me show you the card I have chosen for you tonight, because it tells you exactly what kind of reset this actually is. The card is the Six of Swords. A boatman ferries two figures, a woman and a child, across a stretch of water, moving from choppy, disturbed waves behind the boat toward calm, still water ahead of it. Standing upright in the boat itself, six swords, planted, carried along with the passengers rather than thrown overboard behind them. Everybody reads this card the same way, and I do not think the popular reading is wrong. A transition, movement toward calmer conditions, away from a harder stretch just behind you. That is exactly what the card means. But look at those six swords, my darling, because it is the detail almost nobody actually mentions. They are not left behind, on the shore, abandoned entirely. They are standing in the boat, upright, carried forward, into the calmer water along with everything and everyone else being ferried across. That is the whole of tonight's lesson, my darling. Tonight's reset is not about pretending the summer's difficulties never happened, discarding everything uncomfortable the moment the season changes. It is about carrying forward only what you actually still need, examined honestly, while leaving the rest of the disturbed water genuinely behind you. The swords travel with you because some of what you learned this summer is actually worth keeping. The water itself, choppy and difficult, does not need to travel with you at all. Notice, too, that the boatman is doing the actual rowing, steadily, without any visible strain, while the passengers simply sit, ready to arrive. Tonight's checklist is meant to feel closer to that steady rowing than to a frantic scramble against the tide. 5 small, deliberate tasks, completed calmly across a week, will get you to the calm water considerably more reliably than an anxious, exhausting attempt to fix the whole summer in a single, overwhelming afternoon. Let us go through the actual checklist now, my darling, in 5 parts, and I want you to genuinely do each one, even briefly, rather than simply nodding along. The first is unfinished matters. Take 10 minutes, my darling, and make an honest list of every small, nagging thing you have been meaning to complete since sometime earlier this summer. Not the large, life-defining decisions I have given other readings about, the small ones. The email left unanswered, the appointment left unbooked, the drawer that has needed sorting since June. Your sign generally prefers beginning things to finishing the small, unglamorous tail end of them, and late summer is exactly the season for actually closing that particular gap, while your energy is still expansive enough to enjoy doing it. I want to give you a specific reason this matters more than it might seem to, because unfinished small things do not actually stay small in your own mind. Each one sits, quietly, in the back of your awareness, taking up a small amount of ongoing attention simply by remaining open, and your sign, more than most, feels the cumulative weight of several small open loops, considerably more heavily than the loops themselves would seem to justify. Closing 5 small things this week is very likely to produce a disproportionately large sense of relief, precisely because the weight was never really about the tasks. It was about the ongoing, background hum of all of them remaining unfinished at once. The second is home organization, and I want you to treat your physical space tonight as something considerably more significant than mere tidying. My darling, your surroundings genuinely affect your own considerable radiance, more than they do for most other signs, because you are unusually sensitive to the atmosphere of the rooms you actually live in. Choose one space, a single drawer, a single shelf, a single corner that has quietly accumulated clutter across the summer, and clear it properly this week. You are not aiming for the whole house. You are aiming for one genuine, completed area, because a single finished space produces considerably more real relief than an ambitious, half-finished attempt at everything at once. I want to give you a small trick, my darling, because your sign's natural instinct, once inspired, is to expand the project the moment you begin, turning a single drawer into an entire room by the second hour. Set a timer, honestly, for the amount of time you actually have available, and stop when it sounds, regardless of whether the space is fully finished or not. A drawer genuinely completed in 20 minutes is worth considerably more than a whole room abandoned, half-finished, the moment your energy or your afternoon runs out. The third is relationships, and here I want you to do something considerably smaller than a full audit, because I have already given you that reading, and tonight is not for repeating it in full. Simply think back across the summer and identify one relationship, however small, that has accumulated a genuine, unspoken tension you have been quietly avoiding addressing while the season was still warm and easy. A misunderstanding never properly cleared. A small hurt never mentioned aloud. My darling, autumn's faster pace tends to bury exactly this kind of unfinished business under a great deal of new activity, and I would ask you to address it now, plainly, in one conversation, before the season changes and the opportunity becomes considerably harder to find. The fourth is energy conservation, and I want to be honest with you, because your sign tends to hear this phrase and quietly resist it, associating conservation with diminishment rather than genuine wisdom. My darling, autumn asks considerably more of your sustained energy than the leisurely stretch of late summer has been asking. Look honestly at your current commitments and identify at least one thing you are currently doing purely out of habit or obligation, something that produces no genuine joy and could reasonably be set down before the busier season begins. This is not about doing less in general. It is about entering autumn with your considerable reserves genuinely full, rather than already partially spent on something that was never actually necessary. I want to give you a simple test for identifying it, because it can be difficult to spot from inside your own busy week. Ask yourself honestly whether you would genuinely miss a particular commitment if it simply stopped existing tomorrow, or whether you would feel, mostly, relief. My darling, an obligation you would mostly miss is worth keeping. One that would mostly relieve you, if it disappeared, is very likely the exact thing tonight's reading is asking you to set down before autumn's busier pace makes releasing it considerably harder than it is right now. And the fifth is your September intention, my darling, the one thing you actually want the coming season to be about, chosen deliberately now, while you still have the clarity of late summer's slower pace, rather than left to be decided by whatever happens to demand your attention first, once autumn's momentum actually begins. Keep it to a single sentence, my darling, and let it be genuinely yours, rather than a responsible-sounding resolution borrowed from what you imagine you ought to want. Your sign chooses its intentions most powerfully when they are actually alive to you, something closer to a genuine want than a tidy obligation, and a September built around one true want, however modest it sounds aloud, will carry you considerably further than an impressive list of responsible goals you do not actually feel anything about. Let me tell you about Louisa, because I think her story shows exactly how small this reset actually needs to be in order to genuinely work. Louisa was a Leo client of mine who came to me each year, reliably, in late August, describing what she called her annual late summer heaviness, a specific, recognizable tiredness that arrived every year at roughly the same time and that she had never quite connected to anything structural, assuming it was simply a personal failing, a lack of stamina she should have outgrown by now. The first year we actually worked through a version of tonight's checklist together, she was genuinely surprised by how small the actual list turned out to be. 3 unanswered messages she had been avoiding for weeks. 1 kitchen drawer she had been closing quickly every time she opened it rather than dealing with what was actually inside. 1 friendship carrying a small, unaddressed tension since a misunderstanding in June. Nothing dramatic, nothing that, examined honestly, required more than a single afternoon. She did the whole list in one Saturday, she told me, considerably faster than she expected, and described the following Monday as the first September 1st she could remember in years that felt like an actual beginning rather than simply more of the same tiredness continuing forward, unaddressed, into a busier season. She has done some version of the same checklist every late August since, she told me, and says it has become, in her own words, considerably less about the specific tasks each year, and considerably more about the reliable, yearly relief of simply closing the small loops before autumn asks her to open several new ones on top of them. I asked her, a few years into the practice, whether the annual heaviness had genuinely gone away entirely. She said honestly, no, not entirely, and that she had stopped expecting it to. What had changed, she said, was that the heaviness no longer frightened her the way it once had, because she now had a reliable, tested response to it, rather than simply enduring it each year and hoping it would pass on its own. The feeling still arrives, most years, right on schedule. It simply no longer catches her unprepared. If any of this has landed, my darling, tap that like button below this video. It helps this reading find somebody else who has been carrying an unnamed annual heaviness she never quite connected to the season itself. And if you are not yet subscribed, this is the moment, because I make readings like this one for every sign, and I would love for you to be here when the next one arrives. Leave me a comment, my darling, and tell me, in a word or a short phrase, which of tonight's 5 parts you are actually going to do first. Not all 5 at once, simply the first one. I read every single comment, truly, and a comment section full of women, each naming her own first task, is a room full of people quietly, actually beginning the reset together, rather than only reading about it and setting the intention aside. Now let me give you the ritual, and it is short, my darling, deliberately, because tonight's reading has already given you the actual work. This is simply the container for it. Find 20 minutes, sometime this week. A pale green candle if you like one, for late summer's own particular color, and if you have none, it changes nothing, because the object was never the mechanism. Take a piece of paper and write the 5 headings from tonight, quickly. Unfinished, home, relationship, energy, intention. Beneath each one, write your specific answer, briefly, the way I asked you to think through them tonight. 1 list of small unfinished things. 1 space to clear. 1 relationship to address. 1 obligation to set down. 1 intention for September. Choose 1 item from the whole page, my darling, just 1, and do it this week, before you attempt any of the others. Louisa did her entire list in a single Saturday, and you may find, once you begin, that you can too. But if all you manage is the 1 item, that is genuinely enough to begin the actual reset properly. Now, my darling, let me give you the thing I have been building toward all evening. Do you remember the 6 swords standing upright in that boat, carried forward rather than abandoned on the shore behind it? I want to give you the full weight of that once more, because I think it is the actual difference between a genuine reset and a forced, exhausting clean slate that never actually holds. You are not required, my darling, to erase this summer in order to move properly into autumn. The genuine lessons, the real growth, whatever this particular season actually taught you, are entirely welcome to travel with you into the next one, standing upright, examined, chosen deliberately rather than dragged along unconsciously, the way most unresolved things simply are. What tonight's reading has asked you to leave behind is considerably narrower than the whole summer. Only the water itself, the unfinished small matters, the cluttered corner, the unaddressed tension, the obligation that never brought you genuine joy. Everything else, everything that actually mattered, rides in the boat with you. This is a reading you are welcome to return to, my darling, at the same point next year, and the year after that, the way Louisa eventually did. The seasons will keep handing off, your own sign to Virgos, summer's expansiveness to autumn's faster pace, every single year for the whole of your life, and a small, reliable ritual, practiced at the same threshold each time, tends to matter considerably more across the years than any single, perfect version of it ever could on its own. My darling, before I let you go, think of small things. 1. If any part of this reading found you tonight, if you recognized your own annual heaviness in Louisa's story, or your own restlessness in the seasonal handoff I described, tap that like button. It helps this reading find somebody else who needs exactly this small, practical permission tonight. 2. Subscribe and turn on the bell, because I make readings like this one for every sign, and I would love for you to be here when the next one arrives. 3. And this is the one I care about most. Your first task. Just the one. And if this reading gave you something, and you ever want to say thank you more directly, a super thanks is never expected and always felt, and it is a genuine part of how I keep making these readings as carefully as I make them. If you know another Leo who could use a gentle, practical nudge before autumn's pace arrives, send this to her tonight. You may not realize how much a single share matters. It is how this work finds the person who needs it. A late summer reset for Leo. That is the title, and I want to close by telling you exactly what I mean by it, because it is not entirely what you thought when this hour began. It does not mean scrubbing the whole summer clean and starting entirely fresh, as though none of it happened. It means closing the small, unfinished loops deliberately while your own considerable energy is still expansive enough to enjoy doing it, so that autumn arrives to find you genuinely ready, rather than already tired from carrying forward what should have been set down weeks ago. Unfinished matters, closed. One space, cleared. One relationship, addressed. One obligation, released. And one clear intention, chosen deliberately, for the season now beginning. The water behind you can stay behind you, my darling. Carry only what is actually still yours to carry. I am Madame Aurora from Manhattan, and I love you, my dear Leo. I will see you in the next reading.